Hey everybody, what's really going on? It's Richard Thomas and
I'm Tiffany Thomas.
And we are excited to be with you here today at the Lionheart Institute podcast. We have such a great show set up for you. We're going to be talking about how to really reach your full potential, the relationship between relationships and success. And it's so very important that we understand that we are an accumulative part of the relationships that we have. Those people feed into our life. We are the sum total of all those streams of access to people and knowledge and relationships that flow into our life. But one of the topics that we were pre-talking about before we decided on settling and discussing this was Breonna Taylor. And I haven't quite got to a place where I'm able to dialogue about it in a way that is not full of anger, full of frustration, full of misunderstanding and confusion. And I'm so deeply, as I know half the world or more thereof, profoundly confused by the situation that a young lady could lose her life and they not charge the officers for murder, but they charged her for the bullets that missed. And really it was a deeper topic, and I know that a lot of you fall on different sides of the line with this, where some of you believe that it was a justified shooting, and some of you, of course, like myself, don't necessarily feel that way. But there's so misunderstanding about how many women in our world really suffer, and their stories are really tossed into the back bin.
Yeah.
So many of our young women who are productive members of our society lose their lives, whether it's in a tragic way like this, or they shrink back from the woman they could have become because of a traumatic event in their life. And really for us, this show is all about people understanding who you are, elevating who you are, and building for your success.
We do want to let you know that there are going to be some topics and situations we talk about that could potentially be triggers for people. A lot of people have suffered from traumatic events, and we just want to, full disclosure, and warn you ahead of time. We hope that you still take the time to watch the video and watch it all the way through. There's going to be some really valuable information in this that we talk about that we hope will bring something to your life that will be healing, beneficial. But we do definitely just want to disclose that there potentially is some triggers. So,
and extremely important too that our male audience realizes that this isn't just a message for women. This is a message for all of us. How do we climb? And it's specifically, how do we climb to the types of heights and levels that we dream about, aspire to, when we're coming out of brokenness, right? It's not like we talk to the majority of people who are on the 85th story, right? And they want to get to the penthouse.
Yeah.
There's some of those listeners who you're almost there. You're almost at that penthouse lifestyle, right? You were a millionaire and you're reaching for a billionaire. Right. And I hope you watch us and enjoy the show, and you grow and you learn and you figure out who your audience is so that you can communicate better to them as well. But we're also talking to a large demographic of people who are maybe on the first floor, maybe on the third floor, or maybe they're in the basement, and they don't even aspire to climb out of the basement.
True.
They don't know how to get there. Their whole mindset is shattered. They're in a victimized state where everybody's the bad guy. They have no self-empowerment. Right, it's very difficult to achieve anything in your life, listening audience, when you're the victim all the time. And there is a difference. We'll discuss this and we'll make it pretty plain so that you can understand. There's a difference between being victimized and living as a victim.
Yeah.
We're never going to pretend that we live in a world that's perfect. Right? We're going to face situations, whether it's systemic racism, whether it's hate from other people. Hell, they tainted our Gatorade all the time with haterade, right? They saw how pretty I was and what my gifts were, and they tried to sneak in our Gatorade, that haterade, and take my skill from me. But that ain't going to happen, right? So we're not going to live in that status. We're not going to live in that mindset. We're not going to live in that imprisonment. However, it's important, if we never address those things, people simply will never understand how to climb.
So true.
And I think that it is so important that we climb to the next level, right? Don't set your goals so far off that you go from making $1 to I'm making $100 an hour.
Right.
Start setting your goals at levels that are achievable. And that's not to say that you don't have the big picture goal kind of in your mindset, right? As far as, okay, what pieces have to fall in line for me to go from where I am to the top of the mountain, right? I used to love what Zig Ziglar used to say. He'll say, I'll see you at the top of the mountain. And I know I don't sound anything like Zig Ziglar, but I loved Zig Ziglar, listened to his tapes and just grew from that, became empowered by that. Many of you know my story if you're part of the audience. For those who are brand new, we welcome you and we ask you to subscribe. Smash that like button. Yeah. Smash that subscribe button. Become a part of this community. But I used to listen to Zig Ziglar as a young person, right? And the thing about him was that motivation never lasts. Yeah. Well, neither do baths, right? So you take one new every morning, right? So you have to get motivated. Yeah. You have to get inspired and you have to climb. Right?
Absolutely.
And so we're going to be talking about some things that are triggers, right? Some experiences you had, but let's be real. You're pushing to become a doctor, right? You're pushing to achieve at a high level of counseling. You're pushing yourself as a previous to us getting together, a single mom, to go back to school, to overcome minimum wage jobs, right? To aspire to a higher level. I'm a guy who, as I was mentioning earlier, was born with 2 broken legs, and doctors said that I'd never walk, no less run. And I was able to address that in a Forrest Gump manner, get metal braces on my legs, and those braces worked wonders. Helped me not only begin to walk, not only begin to run, but I made it all the way to the NFL. So the person who was the most broken became the breaker. And that's what I talk about a lot of times in my messages, is that I literally went from not being able to run to becoming a running back. Right. Now, that's funny, right? It's kind of crazy how that works in our world, that we can aspire and become better than anyone paints a picture of us. Right. But there are so many things that go into that. And relationships and information and knowledge is so important in that process. But there are things that scar us so deeply that we don't aspire anymore to learn. Right. We don't aspire to grow. We don't aspire to get to that next level because, you know what? We don't think we deserve it.
Right, 100%. Yeah.
We've been so beat up. We've been so hurt. We've been so put in a place where we feel like others expect us to always fail, that we have no value in life. So if you have no value, how in the world do you spend your talent in a way that multiplies, right? There's a story that goes this way. To one I gave 1 talent, to another 3 talents, another 5 or 10 or whatever the exact math is. Forgive me, people who know the story better than I do. But we're expected to multiply our talent, right? But when we're living in fear and we're living in anxiety and we're living in blame and we're living in victimization, what we do is, instead of taking that talent, taking that small skill and developing it into a major attention-grabbing skill set, what we do is we sit on that talent. That talent rots within us. And then we find ourselves unprepared for the moment. Listen, one of my heroes played running back with me at the University of Washington, Leon Neal. He has a saying. It goes something like this. Preparation equals separation. So you've always got to, if you want to separate yourself from others, you've always got to be preparing. You've always got to be a year ahead or 6 months ahead or 6 years ahead, right?
So important,
It's so valuable if you're going to be successful. But then we started talking about your experience, right? I start thinking about the weight, right? I mean, so it'd be like for me right now, right? At one time I was 198. Couldn't gain weight if I wanted to, right? I went to every meal plan. We used to get us 12 dozen eggs.
Oh gosh.
Every day. We would crack 6 of them into a cup. We would take a gallon of milk and fill that cup up. No. And then we would put as much other stuff as we could in there, trying to pack weight on, pack size on it. And I was thinking I'd become a great athlete through this milk egg drink. I put a little bit of vanilla in it. Oh, that's so good. And I would try to get bigger. I needed those calories to get bigger, right?
Oh my goodness.
In those days I could run because I had no weight. Right. If I went to go run right now in the same way that I ran then, with all this nonsense on me, right? I would hurt myself, right? So I've got to be careful now. I'm walking, I'm doing the things I got to do to get it off me because I want to run again. But the same concept is true for people that have been deeply hurt. deeply scarred, what they do is they gain the weight of their experience,
so good,
of their moment, and they're just too heavy to run.
Yeah.
They're too heavy to chase their dreams. They're too heavy to even dream at all. And so it's so important, if you're watching this or listening to this this podcast, that you understand that there are some things that you've got to leave behind. You've got to figure out a way. It's a great quote. What do you pack and what do you leave behind when you're chasing your dreams or you're going after your dreams?
Oh, that's so good. Yeah. So
what do you pack and what do you leave behind?
Yeah.
And yet so many, we're going to use your example because it's so deeply profound. How do you not pack that into the suitcase of your life that you carry with you everywhere? Because it's almost impossible to forget what happened. Every time you close your eyes, I would imagine, right? It's with you.
Sure.
You have to see this person. I don't want to tell your story, right? But I do want people to be free. So you're going to learn in this short amount of time how to unpack some stuff and how really to pack some stuff into your life that'll make you a success just through some small mental adjustments that are hard to do, right? They're very difficult to do. And I want you to share, before I start crying, which I've heard her story probably a half a dozen times.
Right.
And it always deeply hurts me, right? I've been involved in human trafficking and devoted hours and, resources and time and energy into the fight against that. And to think about the pain that some of those women go through. And then to know someone that I deeply love, that their experience so profoundly scarred and wounded. But I do love this. I'm a weird dude, and I get it. I love scars.
Yeah.
They're beautiful.
They are.
They reveal character. They reveal the astounding, amazing reality of who a person can become and what they've gone through. So just take a little bit of time, if you would, and do some unpacking, as it would be.
Unpack so we can repack.
That's right. Come on.
Life is interesting. And life, as most people will tell you, never turns out how you think it's going to go. We all have this idea and plans for our life. And, there's a line in a country song that says, if you ever want to hear God laugh, tell him the plan you have for your life. And
we won't do that to you often, I promise. That country music. Just listen to it backwards and you will get your house back, you get your dog back, you get your cat back, probably even get your wife back. But anyway.
Yes, life never goes how we plan. And sometimes life starts off very differently as well. And what I have learned in my life is that there's so many things that we have no control over. And for me, that started very, very young. And I was about probably 4 years old. And I was raped by a family member. And more than once, actually. And that kind of suffering to that small of a child is devastating. Like there's no other words for it. It completely just devastates the human psyche. You're dealing with so many things, not only emotionally but physically.
Right.
And at that age, who do you tell?
Yeah.
Who
you don't even have words to tell.
No, who do you tell about it? Who do you? How do you explain that when you can't even process something like that? Especially because, these are people that you love, you trust, know. And for most people who prey on children, there's a lot of grooming involved, building trust, building relationships. It's not
building a silent place.
Yes, it's not just a random act. They do happen, but those are rare.
Thank God.
Right. So they build this little world, but it's also a world where you're taught to be silent. and to not talk about these things, right? So you're going through this pain and this suffering, and you don't know how to express it. You're told not to talk about it. You're told to keep it to yourself. And so you just
don't expose it.
Right. We don't talk about it, So you learn to keep things on the inside, right? You learn to be a great actress. And that's something that I learned to do for many, many years. And you just start to feel empty on the inside. And as a small child who's supposed to be just full of life and love and laughter and you're having to hide this big secret on the inside and not tell anybody about it, it just eats away at that. But you have to appear like you're still a normal small child.
Tell me this, because I think it's very valuable for our audience. And maybe it's different for everyone. I assume it is. But what is heavier? The weight of the moment, the experience of that, or the life of lying, basically. They turn you into a liar.
Right.
What is heavier? What was heavier in your experience? Because I guess...
The truth of the matter is, and once again, this is different for every person, so I don't begin to be able to speak for all women or men as well, and their experiences in life. But, from my own experience, those acts are short, so to speak. So while they're devastating in the moment, it is the after effects that will last a lifetime.
Right.
I've had many conversations with women who are survivors of sexual abuse, and a topic that is always something that is talked about is like jail time, sentencing for rapists and things like that. And one of the things that we always talk about, and this justice system does not address, is essentially it's murder.
Right. Because
you have essentially killed this woman. You have taken away her life from her.
Yeah.
So while physically she is alive, she is not living. And that is something that is usually never taken into consideration, is the after effects of what rape does on women. And an emotional scarring that they deal with that will last them a lifetime. Which is essentially
a form of PTSD.
Oh,
right?
100%, yeah.
So they're walking, and this can, the emotion of that moment, not only that moment, but 2 weeks later, you were crying at home, I imagine, right? And someone walks in the door, and you have to flip the switch, or you have to lie what you're crying about, right? So that creates a new experience, doesn't it? Right? So it's a new trauma,
right?
That is originally based on the other one, and now you've got this domino of victimization where you're becoming now your own worst enemy. The memory itself is creating a shattered you. Is that it?
There was years where I was actually very afraid of the dark. I wouldn't sleep in a dark room. I would hide under blankets all the time, and kind of like the whole, what is it, ostrich concept? If you bury your head in the sand, if they can't see you, you can't see them type of, or vice versa, I mean.
Right.
So I spent a lot of time with just like hiding under blankets, just being afraid a lot. I was always scared,
Terror always.
Yeah. Like who was going to walk through my bedroom door, So that was definitely a fear that I had. But children are resilient.
They are.
They really are. And the human mind is a pretty incredible thing of how we learn to cope and deal with those situations, especially when we're dealing with it alone. Essentially we're dealing with this alone. And you eventually learn to just cope, and you just go on with life, right? You just kind of figure out a way, and you just keep moving and moving. And for me, I just kind of, I learned to just go through the motions and just try to find something in life that would bring me joy.
Right.
You try to find things in life that will that you can look at and be beautiful.
Fill that void.
Because, all of a sudden your childhood innocence of how you see the world and you see people has been ripped from you.
Mm-hmm.
So now you see how dark and evil the world can really be. And I mean, that's obviously something that no child should ever have to experience, no adult should have to experience, and then it actually happened again when I was 16 with somebody that I knew as well. So now I am reliving something 12 years later.
Right.
That now brings a whole bunch of memories, things that I had repressed, things that I had, just tried to forget and move on with my life. Now it's coming full force.
Yeah.
Now at 16, I'm very more aware of the world and life. I don't see things as most children or, would see them. But then it happens again.
Right.
So now you're dealing with a whole nother set of emotions, of feelings that are running deep. And the devastating thing is, the truth is most people are raped by people that they know. Majority, as horrible as it sounds, majority of people are raped by family members, friends of family, people that are close to them. And people don't ever realize the significance of that because there's trust, there's familiarity.
Yeah.
And honestly, that makes it so much worse. It really does, because a lot of these people you see throughout your lifetime.
They're with you.
They're with you. It's not just you had this incident, it's over. But sometimes in my case, I had to see these people on multiple occasions.
Right.
So every time that I had to see these people, it's like reliving it over and over and over again.
So I want to be careful here. So I want you to just put me in check if I'm wrong. Okay. A lot of times what happens for people in the Black community, for instance, okay, they experience a horrific racist incident, right? They're walking home, they get beat up, called the N-word.
Right.
They're brutalized, right? And then later on, they're actually accused of always looking for racism, right? So we see it in different ways, obviously. Those who have been exposed to it and been beat up by it and brutalized by it, we do see it differently, right? We expect it. But then there's those people that would say energy creates energy.
Right.
Right? You're manifesting what you're thinking about, right? There's only racism in the world because you think about racism.
Right.
Right? And of course, I believe in energy. I believe in the fact that we can manifest our dreams and what we visualize and what we goal set about. I've done it, right? But on the negative side of it, spirits attract spirits, right? Or energy attracts energy, right? Here you are as a poor, beautiful 4-year-old little girl. This energy's flowing with you your whole life. 16, this happens, such a traumatic event again. And you're almost accused or left to think, well, was it my fault? Right? Would you dive into that a little bit? Because I think it's so important that people realize that you are not a victim. You're the status of being a personal victim is different than being victimized. It's not your fault for what you wore. It's not your fault for making a decision to go to McDonald's that night. I'm hypothetical situations here, but I know personally the experience of racism, for instance. I supposedly knew better than to be in that part of town.
Right.
I knew better than to talk to that police officer. I knew better than to try to date that white girl. Whatever the situation might be, right? So unfold that a little bit when it comes to that kind of a scenario.
It's interesting because unfortunately in the society that we live in right now, especially with the media the way it is, women and children have been sexualized tremendously.
Come on.
Okay? It's not normal, people. It's not. And we're being desensitized to believe that it is normal. Simple words. For example, media likes to say underage prostitute. Okay, for example, let me tell you, there is no such thing as an underage prostitute. That's right. It is a trafficked child.
Right.
Okay? But they don't want to say trafficked child. They want to say underage prostitute or a consenting minor. Okay, that is another one I've heard the media use. Again, that's rape. Okay, they're a minor. It's not consensual. Okay, so I think you have to really be aware of how society has looked at the sexualization of women and children and justified and accepted the abuse on women and children for it.
And what our men have to do is we have to take responsibility for playing a role in that.
Right.
They say all the time, don't laugh when a racist joke is told.
Yeah.
Same is true for women, right? We need to honor women. I don't want to get into the spiritual aspects of those elements. We need to edify. We need to build up. Not just because of your femininity, but because you're human beings.
Right.
You have value that, for instance, in your case, and I know you haven't really gotten into this, how it psychologically affected your perception of yourself, but that we devalue by dehumanizing, like you were talking about. It's not normal for a little girl should emulate her mom.
Right.
She should be inspired by her mom. She should be in awe of her mom, but she should still be a child.
Yeah.
Right. And that's no judgment on anybody out there who dresses or plays or any of those things. But the general concept of a world that would say consensual minor sex is outrageous, right?
Yeah, it's truly mind-blowing, especially for people who have been victimized with some type of sexual abuse or assault. To hear words like that just makes you angry. You know, it makes you angry because you've been there. And I know for me, with the assault when I was 16, it was a very different situation than when I was 4. And as a 16-year-old, I was actually being blamed because this man was loved by a lot of people. And their whole thought was, he would never do something like this. There's no way. He's a great guy, right? This would, I can't understand how this would even happen. So it had to be my fault. I was accused of seducing him. I was accused of multiple things. As the victim, I was turned into a villain, and he was not. He was victimized for what he did to me, and
given a hall pass.
Essentially, yeah, he was given a hall pass.
A transgression of the moment.
Yeah. All was forgiven. Brushed under the table. We move on.
But you don't move on.
I don't move on.
Right.
That's the problem. They all moved on. You know, I didn't move on. And people don't understand the lasting effects on a woman who's been violated.
Yeah.
Of what that does to them. It goes down to your soul. You know, like it changes everything.
Yeah.
The way you see the world, the way you see yourself, especially. You dramatically change your thought process on everything.
Right.
I mean, you know, you wake up and you look at somebody in the mirror and you don't see the girl that you remembered. You see somebody very different. You see somebody who is broken, somebody who is dirty, somebody who is just worthless. Because that's what the world has told women, essentially, who have been victimized, is they are those things.
Right.
You know, they're used goods, right? You know, and they always somehow turn it around. And you see this all the time. And this is unfortunately why a lot of women don't press charges against men who rape them, because they don't want to have to relive this in a court where they're going to be villainized by the attorneys, because we have to relive that over and over again, and to have somebody make it less than what it was and continue to rip us apart, we can't emotionally do that.
Right.
It's just, it takes everything just to live from day to day sometimes, that you just want to forget it. You just want to move on. And sadly, a lot of women feel somehow it's their fault, so they live with a huge amount of guilt.
Well, I mean, people have given you those garments. Yeah. Right? So this I say the monster, right? Takes away your innocence. Yeah. Takes away your purity. Says, give me those garments. You're naked, you're abused, you're left alone. And the only garments given back to you by your family, your friends, people that are supposed to support you, are garments of shame. So they hand you, why would you do that?
Yeah.
They hand you, why didn't you say anything? They hand you, why did you flirt back? You know what a man does. And so now all you're left to wear is shame, guilt, responsibility. And you're a child.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we're going to get to the nuts and bolts of this, but at some point, you've got to become naked again, like you're saying, in front of the whole world. But the only way to get redressed in the garments that are beautiful and not tainted again is to take that shame off.
Yeah.
Is to take that brokenness off. Is to take that self-hate off. That self-judgment. I know I can. The only thing that I can even compare it to is racism, right? Because it's so foul. It's so it's a mental disease that affects so many of us, right? To where the only way you fix it is you say, you know what? I'm gonna tell the fucking truth.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna hide anymore. I'm not gonna live in this shame. I'm not gonna live in this guilt. And you stand there naked and unashamed. Now that takes a transformation.
Yeah.
That takes a commitment to honesty.
Yeah, it does.
Tell me this. Your experience, you're not unique.
Right.
Give us some stats. Give us some real numbers. So our audience who is sitting at home, right? Or they're driving their car, or they're at their workplace and they're sneaking an episode in. Right? What are some of these stats? Because I know that I would think it's, I'm gonna be honest with you, I would think this happens 1 in a million times. I would think something this foul, this dirty, happens once in a lifetime. Right? That's the only way that I can perceive it. That's how foul it is. But give some of the real truth of what's going on.
So according to the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, and you can look them up, 1 in 5 women will have experienced some form of sexual abuse or assault in their lifetime. 1 in 5. That is 25 million women. 25 million.
We're going to see, I know I see 5 women every day.
Yeah. And 1 in those 5 have experienced some type of rape or assault.
I have 5 women that are beyond measure important to me. You, Hannah, Mariah, and my baby girl, Christy. I have my mom, my sister. I'm over 5 already.
Yeah.
And I know stats aren't fair, so they don't, it's not necessarily isolated to one. I would imagine that it's actually worse in poverty.
Sure.
But.
Well, and if you break it down even more, you will find that 80% of women who've suffered sexual assault of some kind were under the age of 25.
Gosh.
And then 43% of them were under the age of 18. 43% under the age of 18. So we're talking minors and children. And because it's important to bring awareness to this as well, I want to give you stats on men. I know rape among men is not something that is talked about a lot. It's a very uncomfortable topic for people. Men don't usually ever want to come forward with it and talk about it, so it's not generally talked about. But I want to give statistics because it needs to be an awareness there too. But 1 out of every 21 men will suffer some type of rape or sexual abuse in their lifetime. And on top of that, 28% of those men will have suffered it when they are under the age of 10.
So if you imagine a classroom, which there could be 21 kids or 21 boys in a classroom, one of those kids, first grade, second grade, third grade.
Yeah.
I know, again, like I said, stats don't exactly, that's not how they all work, right? But if you were to condense it and make it that simple and walk into any elementary in America, you could just walk into a classroom and say, one of these kids.
Yeah.
One of these boys.
The crazy thing, too, is if you want to talk about college, because those are in the statistics, too, and that's a big one, actually. 23% of girls will be raped probably their first year in college. Gosh. 23%. So it's a lot more significant than people think, and a lot of that is due to the fact of of society desensitizing the issue of sexual assaults.
Sure.
You know, especially if you're dealing with colleges, you're dealing with parties and people being drunk. We've had cases, you know, a few years ago of a kid who raped a girl who was already passed out and drunk and passed out, you know, and it's a mindset that that's acceptable.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the problem. And that is obviously one of the reasons why we're talking about this, because there needs to be so much more awareness
100%.
that we need to stop sexualizing women and children. Now, I'm not saying it's not okay to wear a fun outfit that makes you feel good, a sexy outfit. I'm all about feeling sexy and feeling beautiful. So it's not saying that you don't have a right to do that, because you do.
Yeah.
It's saying we should not be excusing men's behavior on how they treat us.
Based on how attractive you are.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It should not, their behavior, it shouldn't be, like, we should never teach our boys and our children and our daughters to say, oh, they're just boys. They're just being boys. That is one of the worst things we could teach our children, is especially our girls, to accept the phrase, boys will be boys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
it's just locker room talk.
It is. And it's just, all that is doing is not allowing accountability to be held. And it's excusing bad behavior and accepting being treated this way because, oh, boys will be boys, or, oh, maybe I shouldn't have worn this outfit, you know?
But see, that's his asinine thinking. One of my favorite players in the world, first time I got DirecTV, I got it because of this person. I gave my $200 that set a satellite dish up on my house. I have a weird deal. If you know me, about ever putting somebody else's name on my back, I just think it's creepy. I think it's weird. I mean, my name is Thomas, so I've had my own jerseys with Thomas on it.
Right.
Number 30, number 34. They say I'm number 30 in the playbook, but I'm number 1 in your heart. But I had just had a weird thing about it. But Michael Vic is Michael damn Vic. And when he was at the top of his game, I had me a Michael Vic little shrine up. I had set up a whole area. I was ready to watch Michael Vic post his dogfighting days, or pre his dogfighting days, whatever. And so imagine me for a minute, loving Michael Vic.
Right.
I'm a grown man at this point. I've already played football, but he's damn near, I'm so in awe of him. I'm like, that's my hero.
Right.
I want to be like Michael Vic, right? So I go and put a Michael Vic jersey on. I go walk out proud as can be. It's like saying that gives permission to somebody to come tackle me because I got a Michael Vic jersey on.
Yeah.
It makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
The way that, I mean, I would prosecute him if I didn't beat the living brakes off him for tackling me, right?
Yeah.
Just because I have a Michael Vic jersey on does not make me a target for you to think that you're a linebacker tackling me in the open field.
Yeah.
Right? And so, but so many young women, I hear that all the time. And I have daughters, and so I want to be careful here. It is not as an excuse, but young ladies, please, you're beautiful as you are. You do not have to go out of your way to impress.
Yeah.
Be wise. There are evil men out there, evil women too, for that truth.
It's true.
There are, we'll call them wolves, right? And I know this is true because we raise lions, right?
Yes, we do.
We are a people of lions. So the great Winter North series, why the lions consider the opinions of sheep, because there's a lot of sheep out there that aren't actually sheep. They're wolves in sheep's clothing.
Yeah.
So be wise, be vigilant, be smart, do the things that you need to do, like there's a paint nail thing, whatever.
Yeah, some college boys actually created a nail polish that is designed to change color in roofies, drinks that have been roofies. So
you can stick your finger in
right,
your
so the
drink.
girls can stick their finger in a drink, and if the nail polish changes, they'll know their drink has been roofied. And they did this because of the amount of girls that are roofied in college and even post-college, you know, and so much date rape and rape because of it, so that they created this. And
so many victims become victimizers, right?
Yeah, it can happen.
So many broken people become breakers, right? Where they are filled with so much rage and anger and misconfusion about what happened to them, that they end up doing it and so forth.
Yeah.
Just be wise.
For sure.
Walk in wisdom, because our associations are so important.
Mm-hmm.
So start talking to me
Yeah.
about, because if a young woman can do it,
Mm-hmm.
a man that's been in a similar situation can.
Yeah.
If a person who faced racism, they can do it,
Mm-hmm.
right? If a person lost a loved one, they can do it, right? My poor babies themselves, they lost their mama.
Yeah.
And it can mess your head up to where you live in a depression and you live in a fog and you live in a victim state where you're always like,
Yeah.
if this wouldn't happen, that wouldn't happen.
Right.
So let's start to unfold. What do you do with all that brokenness? What do you do with all that pain, all that hurt? Because that element of brokenness can lead to such post-traumatic stress that we need to start giving people avenues
Right.
of restoration. How do I restore my value? How do I restore my vision? How do I restore my belief in my capacity?
Yeah.
So start talking about that a little bit.
Well, I think as any woman or man, as any person who has suffered a traumatic situation, and not just rape, well, any traumatic situation, there's so many out there that people suffer with, you go to a very dark place. And, I remember being 16 years old, feeling like I was the most hated person in my family, in the world. I just felt like that I was making everybody so unhappy at one point in time that I thought if I was no longer here, it would be better for everybody. Because I had so much pain that I didn't know what to do with. And I felt very alone. I felt very attacked. And so it took me to a place where I was willing to take my own life.
Suffering in silence.
To just make it go away.
Yeah.
Not only to end my suffering, but because I genuinely believed that everybody would be happier if I was gone. So I know that a lot of people who have been traumatized get to a place where it is very dark. A lot of people feel that their life is no longer worth living because you don't want to live with that pain every day. You don't want to relive it.
Depression, anxiety, stress.
All of those things. Just that there's no reason, because every day it's the same. It's this dark place of just suffering and pain, and there feels like there's no way out. Nobody understands you. Nobody, how do you even begin to explain this to anybody?
And it's a shattered self-image.
Yeah.
Right? So much of that image, which should be formed in our early years of confidence and joy,
Right.
and how do we, goal set, and how do we visualize, and how do we develop, right, a picture beyond the moment,
Right.
and start to walk in it. All those things should be developing at a time where you're being broken.
Yes.
Right? And so talk about that restoration journey for you at least, and I know for myself it is very close to that, I would imagine, and for most people this is a route that you can take. But what does that process of restoration really look like?
So when you are broken from something like that, it's like a trigger effect. Okay, so you will start to live a life of bad decisions. You will make bad choices for yourself because you don't know how to make anything different.
Right.
And that is because emotionally you're empty. Okay, you have lost your value because somebody took that from you.
They tarnished it.
Right. You feel powerless. You feel like you have no control over anything. So you will begin to make bad decisions. And, especially for women, a lot of those are really bad relationships, long list of them. Because when you are abused, you tend to navigate towards abusers.
Right.
So it's very common for girls who have been sexually abused to end up in abusive relationships. Because we don't know anything else. That somehow, as crazy as it sounds, it's comforting to us because we know what to expect, right? So we
it gives its own perverted reward.
It does.
Right? The only attention you've become accustomed to is that that pain of being taken from.
Right.
But that's still an emotion. That's still a feeling. Where a lot of people turn to cutting, post-traumatic response, and that's true of sexual abuse or accidents they'll see. There's so much pain, and I don't understand the process of cutting exactly, but there's so much pain in that memory that they actually start cutting themselves to have a fresh wound that they can focus their that's how bad they hurt, right?
A lot of it's because you feel so numb and so empty that you want to feel something, and you need to feel something so you feel alive. Women will often too, they will revert their loss of themselves, and they will only find value in sex, which is very common. So you see a lot of women who are sexually abused. You see women who revert from men altogether, and then you'll see those that just run to them because the only time that they feel worth anything is when they're having sex. So you'll see that contrast too, where women seek to find their value again, and that's all they know. So that's how they feel valuable.
People can start to search for something that they feel is missing, taken from them. So they're trying to find that in other people, And that's one of the worst ways to find yourself in a relationship, for instance.
For sure,
is you're trying to, as they say, my half and your half, we make a whole. But that's not at all how relationships work.
No.
And that's not at all how we as individuals work. The way that we become a whole couple is I have to be whole. And you have to be whole. And then we can bring our two wholes together and it makes something. But if I bring half of me and you bring 3/4 of you, what we have is a formula for taking. I'm always looking for my missing half in you, and you're always looking for your missing quarter in me, or whatever the math is that way. You're always looking for it in me. And really, you quickly discover this joker ain't got what I'm missing. They're not even built the way I am. They're not even equipped the way I am. They don't see the world. I mean, you have similarities, of course, in relationships, or that relationship may not work either. But you've got to come to a place where you're whole in yourself. And that's why so many people turn to some form of religion,
That's true.
Is that spiritual journey of restoration. And I believe, I'm a strong Christian. I have strong Christian values. Beliefs. That's where my conviction is. Not that I super judge other people, but I have theological reasons why I believe what I believe, and I'm sure they do as well, so for the purpose of certainly this podcast, there's no judgment of that, but there is an understanding that religion may not be real to a lot of people. It's just the brokenness hurts so bad that they're trying to find a path of restoration. And so they're not even connecting with God necessarily, because they're still trying to find their missing parts, And yes, you can be restored in your God. I don't mean that. I understand that there's some of that that happens spiritually, divinely, whatever that process is. But in the process of a self-image, self-concept, talk about your process to re-strip the old and to renew the new, so that you had the paintbrush back in your hand again to paint the future of the life you wanted for you, that you decided you deserved.
So I can actually give you the exact moment where it started to change for me. And it's kind of crazy, but the gentleman who raped me when I was 16 tried again a few years after that.
Wow.
And I think maybe in his mind he was thinking, okay, at this point I was 18, I was legal, there wouldn't be any ramifications. And
he could trick you into this is real love.
Right. I'd be consenting at that point, right? So it'd be okay. And I remember that moment so vividly, because I remember feeling terrified. And I remember him literally being on top of me, and I was panicking, and I felt like this small little girl again, that I was just terrified. And I thought, what am I supposed to do? Like, I can't stop him. Like, what am I going to do? And I remember that turning moment in my head where I was like, no, this is not okay. Like, this is not okay. And I remember fighting him back and kicking him off of me and just saying no.
Right.
Like, this is not okay. You're not going to do this to me again. And that was such an empowering moment for me.
I can imagine.
To be able to be put back in a situation where I didn't have the control or the power and fight back.
Yeah.
And say, no, we're not doing this again. I'm not living through this again.
Yeah.
And so to be able to have that power to fight back, to kick him off of me and then, run away essentially, it was the turning moment for me to be able to say, okay, maybe I can get some of this back.
And I want you to keep on with this, but I do want to say this. I'm terrified to have this conversation with my little Hannah. Yeah. But I've had it with all my kids, from my boys to, and I'm not looking forward with Jax either, but if you're in that situation and you are and something is happening, your body is not you. Yeah. So baby, just survive, just survive. I'm sorry, you guys, just go somewhere, and just survive that moment. And now I'm crazy, so I'll deal with it my goddamn self. But the God is gotta get us. Yeah. Okay. I'm so sorry. To where if you're in that situation, just survive. Yeah. Right? You're an 18-year-old woman at this point, strong, and you just had enough. So I'm not saying not to fight back. Okay, I just want you to survive.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm sorry. So, gosh, I say that I don't even know where I'm at now.
It's okay. It's emotional. It's I've lived with it for a long time, from all my life. So for me, I still get emotional about it, but it's easier for me to talk about it with less emotion than people hearing it. It's hearing it is very traumatizing for people. Sometimes to hear what victims go through, what they've suffered, to hear their stories are very difficult.
Well, for somebody like me,
yeah.
Right? I want to go get in my car right now. I want to find this joker's address.
Yeah, I know.
And I want to bring restoration. Right?
Yeah.
Which I think is the natural response, right? We are defenders, right?
Well, I spent many years, I grew up in church my whole life, like very similar to you. I had, my grandparents were missionaries.
Honestly, I did not grow up in church. I went to church. There's a difference.
That's true. I grew up in church, okay? My grandparents were missionaries. I had uncles that were pastors, and, I was at church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesdays, Saturdays, I grew up in that. So for me, I grew up also very angry with God. Yeah. And I always felt when I went to church that nobody ever talked about people like me. Right. How do you deal with that? So emotionally, I really struggled with church a lot. I spent a long time being angry at God and just throwing my hands in the air and just saying, why? Like, why? Why did I deserve to go through this? Not once, but twice. I just don't understand. What did I do so wrong? Right. That you would allow a child to suffer like this, So I spent many years just being angry in general. Yeah. There was a very, very dark period of my life that I was just angry at men. I was angry at God. And all honestly, I was not a very nice person. And I will totally admit that. I'm
sorry to interrupt you, because you're so sweet now. I know what I got before I got in my feelings, all up in my emotions. Oh no. I was going to say that. You can't fight back. If you can't fight back in the moment, let happen what happens. But immediately, if I were you or I'm somebody, they've got these places now where there's furniture set up, there's windows,
Right.
there's pots, right?
Yeah.
And I'm this is not necessarily the only formula,
Yeah.
but there's formulas like this. You get to go in there with a bat in your hand and destroy things for an hour, or 30 minutes, or whatever your cardiovascular would take. I think it's really important in that purging process to allow that rage, that anger, that hurt to really come out. Now, like you said, your moment was taking that power back,
Yeah.
and saying, "Get off me," and that being a changing moment for you. Well, some people can't have that moment, right? So
Right.
you've got to create that moment.
Yeah.
You've got to be intentional about that moment. You've got to, with a counselor, with a therapist, with, gosh, I want to say something crazy like your ex-boyfriend's car and a bat.
No.
That's not what I want you to do. But you have to be intentional about
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
It's not just a passive process. You're not going to be able to
No.
just passively think it's going to vanish someday, right?
Right.
There's different processes. I'm sure some people can write it out. Some people can visualize it out. Some people can talk it out, right? But you got to get it out.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The thing is when you have been victimized, you tend to live a life of a victim. And I want to clarify that you do not have to live a life as a victim.
So good.
And there is a difference. And so what happened to you will never go away.
Sure.
Right. That's going to always be part of your life, but you do not have to let that control your life. You don't have
So
to
good.
let that dictate your future. You do not have to let that take away from you your power, take away from you your soul and who you are, and you will forever be changed because there is no way to get back the person that you were before that. You know, in my case, I never got to even become the person that I
you
should
could
have been.
Right. I say it this way a lot of times when I'm talking about situations. Don't give an eternal name to a temporary situation.
Yeah.
Don't name your child, your future, your dream by your trauma.
Yes.
Name it by the power of your dream, by the beauty of its potential, right?
So years ago, and I've mentioned this in a previous podcast, but I worked with victims of human trafficking. And that's kind of where I got my start to my counseling degree and going to school and all that. And, you know, I had lived through something very traumatic. I had dealt with PTSD because of it, depression, anxiety, all these things that lasted.
It's a great video. You should find it.
Yeah, it lasted a long time. And so I have lived through all that. So I wanted to be able to give back, right? I wanted to be able to help.
And that can be a healing process.
Yes, it can truly be healing. But I thought if I could just share what I have learned that I wish somebody had told me when this had happened to me to help me get to a better place faster, you know, then I've got to share what I know to help. So I started working for an organization or volunteering in human trafficking, working with these girls. And one of the biggest things that I had to learn that I wanted to share with them is that nobody can take away your value.
It's good.
Nobody can take away your worth.
Yeah.
Because you know what? God gave us our value. The minute we were conceived, we were worth something. And nobody can take that from us. But we have been taught that they take that from us. When you are victimized, you lose that. But that is a lie. And nobody can take that from us. And sometimes that's hard for people to kind of grasp that thought. So,
well, I think that so much of it runs around the idea that we're a physical being.
Yes.
Right? So we think we're physical beings having a temporary spiritual experience. Where in reality, if you're a God believer in any form, you're a spiritual being having a temporary physical experience. And so who we are value-wise is not just in this flesh.
Right.
So
well,
that's a good point.
It took me years, you know, to finally make peace with God and how I felt and to truly create a relationship that I had with him to allow him to help restore what I had lost. And part of that was helping me to understand that he gave me my value and nobody could take that from me.
Yeah.
And but I had to believe it about myself. And so an example that I want to share with you, because it really was powerful for somebody who has experienced this pain to visually see something. And so I want to take this $20 bill. Okay, you just kind of, you crumple it up, you kind of tear it, you stomp on it, throw it on the ground. Now, if you're walking by and you see this dirty, broken, ripped, trampled $20 bill on the ground, are you still going to pick it up?
I'm going to.
Right, everybody's going to pick it up, and why are they going to pick it up?
Why?
Why would you pick it up?
Because it's a $20 bill?
Because it's a $20 bill, right. So
I want that $20 bill.
it doesn't matter how dirty it is, how ripped it is, how broken it is, because somebody's going to take that $20 bill, and you're going to be able to still get the value of the $20 bill because it never loses its value.
So good.
So no matter how broken and battered and dirty you feel that people have told you are still worth the same that you were before it. Because you will never lose your value. And that is something that I had to learn, and it took me a long time to learn it, and years of pain and suffering and not understanding that. So I had to take that back.
Yeah.
And when I learned that I had never lost my value in the first place, I was able to get that power back, that control back over my life that had been ripped from me. And I look back at my really dark times, and sometimes I'm ashamed of the person that I was. And, I just want to encourage you to, if you are around somebody that seems really angry, that's going through a lot, I promise you there is something hidden in their lives that nobody probably knows about. And so I just really encourage you to have patience and love and understanding.
So good.
Because I was not a nice person for a long time, but people who know me now or knew me before would tell you that I'm a really, really nice person, and I'm a kind, loving person and compassionate person, but that was not the person that I was for a long time.
That you let out.
Right, because it was just so much anger coming out. But being able to figure out how to gain the value, we started to restore what I had lost.
Yeah.
And be able to take back that power and that control. And I mean, the truth is that there's always going to be things in life that are out of our control, and for women who have been assaulted, that's very difficult for them. That comes with a lot of anxiety. I know if I don't have control over everything, that gives me really bad anxiety. Yeah. And I went through a phase of being a serious control freak because of it, that I've had to learn to find a balance in.
Sure.
And accept, but that always going to creep in. And the reality is, the trauma that I suffered is always going to be there. Okay, nothing completely takes that away. It diminishes over time. You learn to cope. You learn,
sure.
And the beauty of finding your value and restoring that is, you start to make better decisions for your life.
It's good.
And that is really the difference maker in being able to live a successful life and finding happiness and joy in a broken world when you've been broken. And then staying on that path that keeps you broken.
So good.
And so many people are stuck in that broken world, and they don't ever get themselves out of it because they don't know how. They've allowed what was done to them to determine their fate.
Yeah.
They've allowed it to determine who they become. And they stay in the victim role, and they never take that power back and realize, I may have been victimized, but I am not a victim.
That's right.
And, when you can get to that place and you can find healing in that, and you can find your worth and your value, then you can see yourself. You can look in the mirror and see yourself. And I remember the day when I looked in the mirror and I saw myself for the first time.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's making me a little emotional. Because so many years I had looked in the mirror and I didn't like who I saw. So
good.
I just thought, who is this person? I don't even know this person. But now I look in the mirror and I love who I see, And
So do
I'm glad you do. So that's a beautiful moment when you can see yourself and see the person that, while you may not be the person that you would have been, you are now the person that you choose to be.
That's good.
Because now it is your choice who you're going to be, and it's not left to fate or whatever you believe is the course of life. It is now Your
It's not que sera, sera.
No,
What will be, will be.
Right. It is, you are making choices
Yeah.
for you.
It's good.
And everything that you do from this moment forward is because of these choices that you make for your life. And choices to surround yourself with people that can uplift you, that can encourage you, that can breathe life into you.
It's good.
You know, those will all help elevate you to a place where you can become successful. And you can look back at this and say, you know, wow, like, look at what I did.
Yeah.
You know, and I have those moments all the time, and I'm not where my angle yet. I haven't reached it. I'm still working every day on it. But I've come so far, and being able to get myself to that place and live single, I want to point that out, because that's you need to be alone to find that in yourself. Don't find somebody to think that you're going to get that from them, like we talked about earlier. Right. Like, I'm grateful that I met you when I did, because I was a whole person again. And I didn't depend on you to make me whole.
It's good.
And now what we have is beautiful, because we have a partnership. We have, you know, two people that can breathe life into each other and encourage each other and uplift each other, inspire each other, because we're no longer broken.
Right.
You know, we are whole people. But it takes a while to get there. And, you know, people are afraid to be alone. And especially women, it's hard for us to be alone. I'm not going to lie. We it's hard. And, you know, but you have to be, because in those moments is when you truly can dig deep, and you can soul search, and you can see what you've been through and what you want to do to change that.
Yeah, that's good. Now, when we talk about being a whole person coming to a relationship, I think it's so important that people get there before they show up. However, it is important to understand that we continue to grow as individuals.
Yes, for sure.
And then when you get with your partner, you get with your future husband, your future wife, you get with in that relationship, you're going to continue to grow.
Yes.
So when I say you're 100% whole,
you still have baggage.
Well, not only the baggage, but what I mean is that when we got together, you were whole, but you lacked intimacy.
Yes. That's true.
So your ability, the fear was still there in some senses of letting me see into you.
Yeah.
That was a process that we had to learn to grow through together.
That is true.
And so a lot of times where relationships fail is they can come together whole, right? Individual, I'm whole, you're whole, we come together.
Right.
Then we start going down the road and we don't decide to grow together.
Yeah.
Right? And so we start gaining indeficiencies in that relationship if we're not growing together.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's so very valuable that you realize you don't have to have it all together to get in a relationship. That's not what we're saying.
Right.
But we are saying don't go into a relationship thinking this person's going to make you better. Right. Before we get to your final thoughts for this podcast, I love this. This maybe changed my life as far as that goes, because the value never decreases. For many years, I did school assemblies and traveled the country doing them. I loved it. And what I would do is I would make it a little bit more complicated, in the sense that I would take that $20 bill and I would wrap it inside of a piece of paper. And so to the world, it looked just like a normal piece of paper.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I used to throw that piece of paper on the ground right at the entryway to the assembly. People would kick it. They would step on it. They'd walk past it. I had people pick it up. And I said, oh, man, what's about to happen? They pick it up, throw it in the trash can.
Wow.
And so if somebody picks you up, that doesn't always mean that they love you.
Yeah.
It doesn't always mean that they care about you.
Yeah.
It doesn't even always mean that they see the value in you.
Right. 100%.
You've got to, at some point, begin to open your life back up. You've got to begin to say, you know what, there's parts of me that ain't whole. There's parts of me that were stolen. Parts of me that were broken. Get yourself to one of those gyms that you're beating shit up and you're taking out your anger.
Yeah.
Get to that moment where you're able to fight back and say, not again. Whatever that process is. But start to unwrap your life. Start to unclench your life.
Yeah.
And that's where you'll see the value. And so any final thoughts, really, that kind of run through your mind as far as this episode goes? There's so much that I want to talk to about the choices. So make sure you come back for future podcasts, because we're going to talk about the process of making good choices. We're going to talk about the elements of relationships that are good choices. We're going to talk about how to have a reading plan that's going to get you the choices, how to journal. I mean, there's so many practical, pragmatic things that we're going to install in people just for length of podcast.
Sure.
I think the emotion, the sense of reality from this one, the healing out of the brokenness, so important. And I hope that it's been a blessing to you. I know that it's encouraged me. It's made me emotional all over again every time I hear it.
I know.
But I think emotions are a part of what we need to let out so that we can get to where we want to be. So any real final thoughts from your perspective?
It's still an emotional journey.
Yeah.
The truth is, it's always going to be an emotional journey. But I promise you, the more you talk about it, the more you bring light to it, the easier it will get. The worst thing that you can do is sit in silence and sit in darkness with it and suffer through it alone. And I just really encourage you, if you are somebody who has dealt with sexual assault, whether you're a male or female, whatever the case may be, it's not your fault. Don't ever blame yourself. Do not take guilt on or shame on as your own, because it's not yours.
Yeah.
And that is one of the hardest things to lift, is guilt and shame. And remember, you are worth so much, and nobody can take that away. So don't give that power to anyone. Hold on to that value, and no matter how broken you may feel or how much pain you're in, you are worth something so beautiful to so many people and to yourself. And you owe it to yourself to pick it up and say, you know what? I'm valuable. I'm worth millions. Infinity. You are, there's no value that could be as greater as what you are. And remember that and hold on to that. And please tell somebody. Okay, tell somebody. You know, there's so many people out there that can help. I will list some resources in the descriptions too, of places where you could go for counseling, for shelters. If you're in an abusive relationship and you need to get out there, you know, don't ever think that it's okay to let somebody abuse you, ever. It is not okay. And there are people that can help you. And so I just really encourage you to acknowledge that you are worth fighting for, and fight, because you are worth it. And know that, I promise you, as dark as it may seem, wherever you're at in your life right now, whether this is something that is new and fresh in your life or it's something that you've lived with for a long time, don't let it take your life. Okay? You have the power to live. So live your fullest life and find your value again, and know that you are worth it. That's what I would have to say.
Well said. Hey, Lionheart Institute podcast people. I am so glad you tuned in today. I hope that this has been a episode that has blessed you, encouraged you, maybe took you down down a pathway of some tears. I want to encourage you, share this with somebody you know. Stat again was 1 out of 5.
1 out of 5.
1 out of 17. 1 out of 21.
So I guarantee you know somebody, whether you know or not, but you know somebody that has dealt with this.
So share this video, get it out there. We're going to continue to build the pragmatic, but we are emotional beings. Yeah. We're triune beings, as they would say, right? Spirit, soul, and body. And so it's important that we process these emotions so that we can grow higher. I love the truth of this reality is this. Yeah. We are the highest form of God's creation, right? When he looked at us, or she looked at us and breathed the breath of life into us, when she gave us her breast, and don't get kinky on me here. We'll save that for later. When she gave us her breast to nourish us, to replenish us, we had that value. Yeah. Of being the highest form of its creation, its love. And so know that about yourself, that you have great value, that you are esteemed, I esteem you. I value you. I appreciate you. I'm just thankful that you would spend this time watching this episode, and I hope that you will subscribe. I hope that you smash that like button or whatever they say, and that you will comment on our posts.
Yeah.
Get your feelings out on this, and
we love feedback. We love to hear how our podcasts are changing lives and touching you. We value all the feedback and comments we've gotten from our previous videos. It just encourages us to keep talking and telling stories. And so please don't be afraid to make a comment, or just, you can send us a message.
Share your ideas.
Yeah, by all means, please definitely talk to us. We enjoy it.
So thank you so much. God bless you. And let's continue to change the world.